Harvard versus Trump, battle over $2 billion in federal funding. In a significant legal showdown, attorneys representing Harvard University are set to contest in federal court in Boston on Monday, asserting that the government's decision to freeze over $2 billion in grants and contracts is unlawful and must be overturned. In their submissions to the U.S. District Court in Boston, Harvard's legal team argues that the funding cuts imposed by the Trump administration jeopardize essential research across various fields, including medicine, science, and technology. The university's lawsuit seeks to prevent the Trump administration from using federal funding as a means to exert control over academic governance at Harvard. The Trump administration claims that the funding freeze is a response to Harvard's alleged violation of Title VI of the Civil Rights Act, specifically regarding its failure to adequately address antisemitism on campus. The court hearing is anticipated to be brief, lasting only one day. Harvard is requesting a summary judgment from Judge Allison D. Burroughs to expedite the process, although it remains uncertain when a ruling might be issued. Legal experts consulted by NPR suggest that regardless of the outcome, a swift resolution is unlikely, as either party may choose to appeal the decision. While Harvard is the sole institution involved in this legal battle, numerous colleges and universities nationwide are closely monitoring the situation, as many have also experienced freezes on millions in federal grants. The implications of this case will resonate throughout the higher education landscape, states Jody Ferris, an attorney from Indiana specializing in higher education law. The situation at Harvard is not unique. Smaller private colleges in the Midwest are equally concerned about the federal government's increasing influence over the higher education sector. Harvard's legal arguments. In their court filings, Harvard's lawyers present several key arguments. Firstly, they contend that the Trump administration has violated the Administrative Procedure Act, APA, which stipulates that federal agencies cannot make abrupt procedural changes without justification. They assert that the government failed to adhere to established procedures set by Congress for revoking federal funding based on discrimination allegations. Additionally, Harvard's legal team argues that there is no logical connection between the alleged antisemitism on campus and the cessation of federal funding for critical medical and scientific research. The government has not, and cannot, establish any rational link between concerns about antisemitism and the medical, scientific, technological, and other research it has frozen, which is aimed at saving American lives and maintaining the nation's leadership in innovation, the complaint states. Furthermore, the complaint alleges that the government is infringing upon Harvard's First Amendment rights by attempting to dictate hiring practices, admissions policies, and demanding access to student records without proper legal procedures. The Trump administration's position. On the other hand, the Trump administration accuses Harvard of neglecting its responsibility to protect Jewish students. Following Harvard's refusal to comply with a series of demands, the Joint Task Force to Combat Antisemitism, a multi-agency group within the administration, announced the funding freeze. Harrison Fields, a spokesperson for the White House, remarked, "The flow of federal funds to institutions like Harvard, which enrich their highly compensated bureaucrats with taxpayer dollars, is coming to an end. Access to taxpayer funds is a privilege, and Harvard has failed to meet the fundamental requirements to maintain that privilege." The government argues that Harvard's actions constitute a failure to comply with federal law, including allegations of fostering antisemitism and engaging in illegal discrimination through diversity, equity, and inclusion (DEI) initiatives. Consequently, the administration maintains that the university is not entitled to the federal research funding. The stakes of research funding. The more than $2 billion in question supports over 900 research projects at Harvard and its affiliates, funding critical studies in areas such as Alzheimer's prevention, cancer treatment, military research essential for national security, and the psychological effects of school closures. Carrie Nadeau, a professor and researcher at the Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health, expressed her concerns after losing approximately $12 million in funding for her research on reducing the risk of severe allergies in infants due to the grant cancellation. "We have had to halt our studies and work, which has created a significant ripple effect for everyone involved, including the families we serve and the teams we collaborate with," Nadeau stated. "The families participating in our clinical trial, which was intended to last 7 years, are particularly at risk. Removing a therapy from children, especially when it involves a potentially life-threatening condition like food allergies, raises serious safety concerns. The outcome of this case could determine the future of her project, and she remains cautiously optimistic." Legal experts predict that this case is unlikely to conclude with the initial hearing. Will Harvard prevail in Boston? There is a strong possibility of that, Ferris notes. However, this will likely not resolve the issue entirely. An appeal is probable, and the case may eventually reach the Supreme Court. Thus, even a favorable ruling for Harvard may not signify the end of the story. Harvard versus Trump admin, $2 billion funding battle in court. Harvard takes on Trump admin in court, a battle over billions and academic freedom. Harvard University is headed back to federal court for a pivotal hearing in its case against the Trump administration over $2 billion in frozen research funding. At stake, not just the money, but fundamental questions of academic freedom and government overreach. The university argues the funding freeze is unlawful and puts vital medical and scientific research at risk. But the administration says it's within its rights, accusing Harvard of failing to address antisemitism on campus. With both sides digging in, the case has become a flashpoint in a larger clash over higher ed policy. Here's what to expect as the legal battle heats up. Harvard versus Trump, billion-dollar funding fight. Imagine a world where the pursuit of knowledge is threatened by the very institutions that are supposed to protect it. This is the stark reality that Harvard University is facing as it prepares to take on the Trump administration in a Boston courtroom on Monday. The stakes are high, with billions of dollars in U.S. government funding hanging in the balance. But here's where it gets controversial. The White House has frozen over $2 billion in federal grants, citing the need for changes to Harvard's hiring, admissions, and teaching practices to combat antisemitism and halt diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. The Trump administration's move has sparked a heated debate about the role of government in shaping the academic landscape. On one hand, the administration argues that funding comes with explicit conditions that require support for government policies. On the other hand, Harvard's lawyers contend that the White House is infringing on the university's right to free speech and academic freedom. As the two sides prepare to face off in court, the question on everyone's mind is, what does this mean for the future of academic freedom in America? The university has filed lawsuits and is requesting a summary judgment, a swift decision based on established facts without a full trial. Monday's hearing will be held in front of U.S. District Judge Allison Burroughs, who has already made several interim rulings in favor of Harvard in a separate lawsuit over the foreign student visa system. Although a ruling immediately after the one-day hearing is unlikely, Harvard lawyers have asked for a decision by September 3, the deadline the Trump administration has given to Harvard to wind up its financial obligations with regards to federal grants. Any ruling in the case is likely to be appealed and could end up in front of the U.S. Supreme Court. In a briefing filed in June, Harvard's lawyers argued that the White House is in violation of the free speech provisions of the U.S. Constitution by infringing on the university's right to decide what to teach, to express certain views, and to petition the courts to defend itself. The university also argues that the administration has failed to follow rules about suspending federal funds and that its actions are punitive and bear no rational connection to the concerns they purport to address. Lawyers for the U.S. Justice Department responded by arguing that funding comes with explicit conditions requiring support of government policies. If universities fail to meet these conditions, the grants are subject to cancellation, government lawyers wrote. But here's the part that most people miss: the administration's push against Harvard is part of a broader effort to pressure elite Ivy League universities. Earlier this month, U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement sent subpoenas to Harvard demanding information about international students, and President Trump previously suggested ending Harvard's tax-exempt status. In March, Columbia University in New York agreed to several administration demands, including banning face coverings at protests and reviewing admissions policies, after the White House threatened to end $400 million in funding. However, the moves did not appear to fully appease the administration, and the U.S. Department of Education has since threatened to strip Columbia of its accreditation. And this is the part that sparks the most controversy: what happens when the government starts to dictate what universities can and cannot teach? Does this mark the beginning of a slippery slope, where academic freedom is slowly eroded by government interference? We want to hear from you. Do you think the Trump administration's actions against Harvard are justified, or do you believe that the university's academic freedom is under threat? Share your thoughts in the comments below.